Be me, Carol, 34, Human Resources Manager. Been working here for 3 years, finally in a position where I can make real change. Tired of watching brilliant women get talked down to by male colleagues every single day. See it constantly. Men interrupting women in meetings, explaining basic concepts they already know. Decided it's time to take action against this toxic culture. Spend weeks crafting the perfect policy. Call it Professional Communication Standards and Workplace Respect Initiative. Basically makes it clear that condescending explanations to female colleagues won't be tolerated. Define mansplaining as unsolicited explanations of concepts, procedures, or information to female employees by male employees, particularly when the recipient has demonstrated competence. Include examples like explaining software the woman has been using for years, talking over women in technical discussions, assuming women need basic concepts explained. Feel so proud sending this out company-wide, finally addressing the elephant in the room that everyone's been ignoring. Include clear consequences, verbal warning, written warning, potential termination for repeat offences. Set up anonymous reporting system so women feel safe calling it out. First week goes smoothly. Actually get a few reports through the system. Handle them professionally. Just casual conversations with the men involved. They seem to understand, apologise, say they didn't realise. Then things start getting weird. Notice the senior developers aren't talking to the junior female developers anymore. See Joseph, the lead back-end engineer, literally walk away when Sarah asks him about database optimization. Think maybe he's just busy. Probably nothing. Get called into a meeting with Joseph, David, and Alex, 3 of our most senior engineers. They look absolutely furious. Joseph starts talking, voice shaking with anger. Carol, we need to talk about this policy of yours. Tell them I'm happy to discuss any concerns. Concerns? Concerns? You've basically made it impossible for us to do our jobs. Explain that the policy is just about respectful communication, David interrupts, face red with rage. Respectful? You've weaponized basic workplace interaction. I can't train anyone anymore because I might get reported for mansplaining. Try to stay calm. Explain that training is obviously different. How is it different, Carol? How do I know when I'm training versus mansplaining according to your policy? Tell them to use common sense. Be respectful. Alex loses it completely. Common sense? The policy says unsolicited explanations. When I'm mentoring Sarah on microservices architecture, how do I know she's not going to report me for explaining something she thinks she already knows? Getting frustrated with their overreaction. Look, if you're genuinely helping someone who asked for help, that's obviously fine. Joseph slams his hand on the table. It's not obvious. Your policy doesn't say that. It says unsolicited explanations are mansplaining. If Sarah doesn't explicitly ask me to explain how our deployment pipeline works and I explain it during code review, is that mansplaining? Realize they're being deliberately obtuse. You're missing the point entirely. This is about stopping condescending behavior. David's voice gets even angrier. Who decides what's condescending? You? Some anonymous report? I've been mentoring junior developers for 15 years. I've never had complaints. Now suddenly, I'm a threat? Try to de-escalate. No one's calling you a threat. We're just trying to create a more inclusive environment. Alex interrupts. Inclusive? You've made us all terrified to interact with female colleagues. How is that inclusive? Explain that they're overreacting. The policy is reasonable. Joseph gets up from his chair. Overreacting? Carol, I have a daughter. I mentor women engineers because I want them to succeed. Your policy makes that impossible. Feel like they're ganging up on me. The policy doesn't prevent mentoring. It prevents condescending explanations. David starts listing examples. If Emma asks me about React hooks and I explain the concept, is that mentoring or mansplaining? If I explain why her code solution won't scale, is that mentoring or mansplaining? If I correct her during a client presentation, is that mentoring or mansplaining? Getting exhausted by their hypotheticals. Context matters. Intent matters. Professional judgment matters. Alex throws his hands up. Professional judgment? Whose professional judgment? Yours? The person reporting? We're engineers, Carol. We need clear specifications. Your policy is ambiguous garbage. Feel my temper rising. It's not ambiguous. It's about basic respect. Joseph leans forward, voice deadly serious. Carol, let me make this crystal clear. Your policy has created a situation where any interaction I have with a female colleague could potentially be career-ending. Do you understand that? Tell them they're being dramatic. David's eyes flash with anger. Dramatic? I've been here 8 years. I've trained dozens of developers. I've never had a single human resources complaint. Now you're telling me that explaining technical concepts to women might get me fired? Try to explain the policy again. The policy is about patterns of behavior, not isolated incidents. Alex interrupts. Pattern according to whom? If I help 3 different women with technical issues this week, is that a pattern? If someone reports me twice, is that a pattern? Realize this conversation isn't going anywhere. Look, I understand your concerns, but the policy stays. Just treat female colleagues with respect and you'll be fine. Joseph stands up, face filled with rage. You know what, Carol? Fine. You want to eliminate mansplaining? Consider it eliminated. I won't explain anything to any female employee ever again. Think he's bluffing. That's not what I'm asking for. David stands up too. Actually, that's exactly what you're asking for. You've made it clear that explaining things to women is a fireable offense, so we won't explain things to women. Alex joins them. Congratulations, Carol. You've solved mansplaining. No more explanations means no more mansplaining. Watch them walk out. Feel like that went worse than expected. Assume they'll cool down and realize they're being unreasonable. Next day, Sarah comes to my office crying. Carol, I don't understand what's happening. I asked Joseph to review my database query and he just said to figure it out myself. Feel a chill. Ask her to explain more. I've been working on this optimization for 3 days. Usually Joseph would walk me through the performance issues, but he just walked away. Go find Joseph immediately. He's at his desk, completely focused on his screen. Joseph, we need to talk. He looks up, expression cold. What can I help you with, Carol? Sarah says you refused to help her with a database issue. He nods. That's correct. I'm following your policy. I don't explain things to female employees anymore. Feel my frustration building. That's not what the policy means, and you know it. Joseph leans back in his chair. Actually, Carol, I've read your policy very carefully, multiple times. It says unsolicited explanations to female employees are mansplaining. Sarah didn't explicitly ask me to explain database optimization. She asked me to review her query. I reviewed it. I didn't explain anything. Can't believe his pettiness. She obviously needed help understanding the performance issues. Did she say that explicitly? Did she say, Joseph, please explain database optimization to me? Because if she didn't, then any explanation I give would be unsolicited according to your policy. Try a different approach. Joseph, this is affecting her ability to do her job. He shrugs. That's unfortunate, but I'm not risking my career because your policy is poorly written. The policy isn't meant to prevent legitimate mentoring. Then rewrite it to be clear about that. Until then, I'm not explaining anything technical to any woman in this company. Realize he's serious. Go back to my office, immediately start getting more complaints. Emma can't get help with the React component she's struggling with. Lisa's deployment is failing and no one will walk her through the DevOps process. Rachel is stuck on an API integration that should take an hour with proper guidance. Call another meeting with the senior engineers. This time include Tom, Kevin, and Paul. Other senior team members. They all file in looking grim. Okay, this has gone far enough. Women on your teams need help and you're refusing to provide it. Tom speaks first, voice controlled but angry. Carol, we're not refusing anything. We're following your policy to the letter. My policy doesn't prevent helping colleagues. Kevin interrupts. Your policy says unsolicited explanations to female employees are mansplaining. How do we know when our help is solicited versus unsolicited? Getting tired of this same argument. Use common sense. If someone is struggling and needs help, help them. Paul leans forward. Carol, here's the problem. Yesterday, I saw Lisa struggling with a deployment. I could see she was doing it wrong. If I explain what she's doing wrong without her explicitly asking, is that mansplaining? Feel like I'm talking to children. Context matters. She clearly needed help. Says who? You, Lisa? What if Lisa thinks she's doing it right and my explanation is condescending? What if she reports me for explaining something she thinks she already knows? Joseph chimes in. Carol, you've created a system where any woman can report any technical explanation as mansplaining. There's no appeal process, no objective standard, just your judgment about whether it was respectful or condescending. Try to defend the reporting system. The anonymous reporting protects women from retaliation. David's voice rises. It also protects false accusations from accountability. If Sarah reports me for explaining API design, how do I defend myself? How do I prove my explanation wasn't condescending? Feel cornered. False reports would be obvious. Alex stands up, clearly angry. Obvious to whom? You? You're not a developer, Carol. You don't understand the technical concepts we're explaining. How would you know if my explanation to Emma about React state management was appropriate or condescending? Getting defensive. I don't need to be a developer to recognize disrespectful behavior. Tom's face flushes red. So you're going to judge technical mentoring conversations about subjects you don't understand. You're going to decide whether my explanation of machine learning algorithms to Rachel was appropriate. Realize they have a point, but can't back down. The policy isn't about technical accuracy. It's about respectful communication, Kevin explodes. Respectful according to whom? The person receiving the explanation? Great. So if I explain microservices to Lisa and she feels it was condescending, I get written up, even if she asked for help, even if my explanation was accurate and professional? Try to stay calm. Extreme cases would be handled with nuance. Paul laughs bitterly. Nuance? Your policy doesn't mention nuance. It says unsolicited explanations are mansplaining. It says reports will be investigated and disciplinary action will be taken. Where's the nuance? Joseph stands up again. Carol, let me break this down for you. Your policy has 3 major problems. First, it doesn't define what constitutes solicited help clearly. Second, it makes any woman the sole judge of whether an explanation was appropriate. Third, it threatens our careers with no clear guidelines for what's acceptable, getting frustrated with their complaints. The guidelines are common sense and respect. David slams his hand on the table. Common sense isn't a policy. I need to know exactly what behavior will get me fired. Your policy says explaining things to women might get me fired. So I'm not explaining things to women. Problem solved. Feel like they're all being deliberately difficult. You're hurting your female colleagues to make a point. Alex turns red with anger. We're hurting them? Carol, you created this situation. You wrote a policy that makes it dangerous for us to train women. You made helping female colleagues a career risk. This is your fault. Try to take control of the meeting. The policy stays. Find a way to work within it. Tom's voice gets quiet and threatening. Fine. We have found a way to work within it. We don't explain anything to women anymore. We answer direct questions with yes or no. We don't elaborate. We don't provide context. We don't mentor. Problem solved. Realize they're completely serious. That's not sustainable. Projects will fail. Kevin nods. Probably, but our careers will be safe. And when upper management asks why projects are failing, we'll explain that human resources policy prevents us from training female team members effectively. Feel panic starting to set in. You can still provide guidance, just be respectful about it. Paul shakes his head. Carol, respectful is subjective. What I think is respectful, Emma might think is condescending. What Joseph thinks is helpful, Sarah might think is mansplaining. We're not taking that risk. Meeting ends with them walking out. Spend the rest of the week getting constant complaints. Women can't get code reviews with meaningful feedback. Technical discussions in meetings become completely one-sided. Junior female developers start falling behind on projects. Get called into meeting with my boss, VP of Human Resources, named Catherine. She looks concerned. Carol, I'm getting complaints about productivity issues in the engineering department. Explain that there are some growing pains with the new policy. Growing pains? I have 3 female engineers asking to transfer departments because they can't get proper training. Try to downplay the situation. The senior engineers are having some adjustment issues. They'll adapt. Catherine frowns. Adjustment issues? Carol, I just talked to Sarah. She says Joseph won't explain anything technical to her anymore. She's been stuck on the same problem for a week. Feel defensive. Joseph is being deliberately obstructive to undermine the policy. Or maybe your policy is poorly designed. Walk me through exactly how it's supposed to work. Explain the mansplaining prevention framework. Catherine stops me halfway through. Carol, this policy is way too broad. Of course the engineers are scared to explain things to women. Can't believe she's taking their side. It's about preventing condescending behavior. By threatening to fire men for explaining work tasks, Carol, mentoring junior employees is part of senior employees' job descriptions. Your policy makes that impossible. Try to salvage the policy. We could add some clarifying language. Catherine shakes her head. We could scrap it entirely. I'm getting pressure from the engineering director. Apparently, several major projects are behind schedule because junior developers aren't getting proper guidance. Feel everything slipping away. The policy is necessary. Women have been dealing with mansplaining for years. And now they're dealing with no technical guidance at all. How's that better? Next week gets even worse. Client presentation goes horribly because Emma's React component fails during demo. Normally David would have caught the issue during code review. Now, He just approves everything without detailed feedback. Client is furious, threatens to cancel contract. Get called into emergency meeting with engineering director Robert and Catherine. Robert looks absolutely livid. Carol, we need to talk about your mansplaining policy. Already know this isn't going to go well. I'm happy to discuss any concerns. Robert's voice is controlled but seething. Concerns? We just lost a major client because of your policy. Try to deflect blame. The client issue was due to a technical failure. A technical failure that could have been prevented if Emma had received proper code review, but David was afraid to explain the problems with her implementation because of your policy. Catherine nods grimly. Carol, the senior engineers have completely stopped providing meaningful feedback to female developers. They're scared of being reported for mansplaining. Feel cornered. They're overreacting to avoid having difficult conversations about their behavior. Robert's composure cracks. Overreacting? Overreacting? Carol, my entire department is falling apart because half my team can't get proper training. Sarah's database optimization project is 3 weeks behind. Lisa's deployment pipeline is broken. Rachel's API integration is a disaster. Try to stay calm. These are temporary growing pains. Temporary? It's been a month. My senior engineers tell me they're never going to explain technical concepts to women again because your policy makes it too risky. Catherine looks exhausted. Carol, I've talked to Joseph, David, Alex, Tom, Kevin, and Paul. They all say the same thing. Your policy is too vague and the consequences are too severe. They're not taking any chances. Getting defensive. The policy is clear about preventing condescending explanations. Robert explodes. Clear? Clear? Carol, your policy says unsolicited explanations are mansplaining. In software development, most mentoring is unsolicited. I see a junior developer struggling and I explain what they're doing wrong. According to your policy, that's mansplaining. Try to explain the intent. The policy is about patterns of condescending behavior. Then why doesn't it say that? Why does it threaten disciplinary action for unsolicited explanations? Why does it make women the sole arbiters of what constitutes condescending behavior? Feel like everyone's ganging up on me. We're trying to create a more inclusive environment. Catherine shakes her head sadly. Carol, you've created the most exclusive environment possible. Women can't get technical help from the most experienced engineers in the company. Robert continues his tirade. Do you have any idea what you've done to my department? My female engineers are falling behind because they can't get proper mentoring. My male engineers are terrified to train anyone. Projects are failing left and right. Try one last defense. The senior engineers are choosing to be obstructive. They're choosing to protect their careers. Your policy threatens termination for mansplaining but doesn't define what that means clearly. Of course they're being cautious. Catherine pulls out a folder. Carol, I have documentation here of 12 separate project failures or delays directly attributed to lack of proper technical guidance. The company has lost over $200,000 in revenue. Feel my stomach drop. That's not directly related to the policy. Robert's face turns red. Not directly related? Carol, Sarah told me explicitly that she can't get help with database optimization because Joseph won't explain anything technical to her anymore. Lisa's deployment failed because no one would walk her through the process. How is that not related to your policy? Realize I might be in serious trouble. We can modify the policy to address these concerns. Catherine closes the folder. Carol, upper management is furious. The CEO is asking questions about human resources policies that are interfering with productivity. Feel panic setting in. I was trying to address a real problem with workplace culture. Robert's voice gets dangerously quiet. You were trying to solve a minor communication issue and instead created a major operational disaster. My engineers won't train women anymore because you've made it too risky. Try to minimize the damage. We can provide additional guidance to clarify the policy intent. Additional guidance? Carol, your policy needs to be completely rewritten or scrapped entirely. The engineering department is demanding its removal. Catherine looks at me seriously. Carol, I need you to understand the gravity of this situation. We have senior engineers refusing to mentor junior employees. We have female developers asking for transfers because they can't get training. We have project failures costing hundreds of thousands of dollars. The executive team is asking for explanations. Feel everything falling apart. What do you want me to do? Robert answers immediately. Rescind the policy, today. Send out company-wide communication that the anti-mansplaining policy has been withdrawn. Can't give up everything I've worked for. That would send the wrong message about workplace respect. Carol, the current message is that human resources creates policies that make it impossible for employees to do their jobs effectively. That's worse. Catherine nods. I'm getting complaints from multiple departments now. Word has spread about the policy. Men in sales won't explain products to female colleagues. Men in marketing won't provide feedback on campaigns created by women. It's spreading throughout the company. Realize the scope of the disaster. That wasn't the intent. Robert stands up. Intent doesn't matter. Results matter. Your policy has created a toxic work environment where half the company is afraid to communicate with the other half. Try one final appeal. We could revise the language to be more specific. Catherine shakes her head. Carol, the damage is done. The senior engineers have completely lost trust in human resources. They've told me explicitly that they'll never risk explaining anything to women again, regardless of policy changes. Feel defeated. So what happens now? Robert's expression is stone cold. Now you face the consequences of creating a policy that damages productivity and employee relationships. The executive team is meeting tomorrow to discuss this situation. Spend sleepless night knowing I'm probably getting fired. Next day, get called into conference room. CEO William, CFO Margaret, and Catherine are waiting. William looks furious. Carol, explain to me how your human resources policy has resulted in a $200,000 revenue loss. Try to explain the policy goals. I was addressing patterns of condescending communication toward female employees. Margaret interrupts. By making it impossible for male employees to train female employees, Carol, our productivity metrics show a 30% decrease in female developer output since your policy implementation. Feel cornered. The senior engineers are deliberately sabotaging the policy. William's voice gets loud. They're protecting their careers. Your policy threatens termination for explaining work tasks to women. Of course they're being cautious, Catherine adds grimly. Carol, I've now had 7 different department heads complain about productivity issues related to your policy. It's not just engineering anymore. Margaret pulls out financial reports. The client we lost yesterday was worth $400,000 annually. Emma's React component failed during the presentation because David was afraid to provide proper code review feedback. Feel sick. That's one isolated incident. William explodes. Isolated? Isolated? Carol, we have 3 major projects behind schedule, 2 client relationships damaged, and 12 female employees asking for transfers because they can't get proper training. Try to defend my work. I was trying to create a more inclusive workplace. You've created the least inclusive workplace possible. Women can't get technical help from experienced colleagues. How is that inclusive? Catherine looks at me sadly. Carol, the executive team has made a decision about your employment status. Know what's coming. I understand there have been some implementation challenges. William cuts me off. Implementation challenges. Your policy has been a complete disaster from day one. The engineering department is demanding your removal. Margaret nods. The financial impact alone justifies immediate termination. But the damage to employee relationships and workplace culture is even worse. Feel tears starting. I was trying to protect women from condescending behavior. And instead, you've isolated them from all technical guidance and mentoring. You've made their jobs impossible to do effectively. William's voice is final. Carol, your employment with this company is terminated effective immediately. Security will escort you out.